Good afternoon. I'm speaking to you on the traditional territory of Treaty 6, and I also acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection to this land. Earlier today, Albertans learned of another round of allegations that Danielle Smith directly interfered in ongoing criminal prosecutions. These new allegations are coming from within the government. There are clearly Albertans with knowledge of this interference who want to give evidence. They should not be forced to do so anonymously to media outlets and to fear for their jobs. This is precisely why the reason we must have an independent investigation into Smith's meddling with criminal prosecutions. The attempted cover-up over the weekend is no cure for the chaos Danielle Smith and the UCP are causing in our justice system. Let's be clear. Danielle Smith herself has repeatedly described her attempts to meddle with criminal cases. She said so twice on camera and a third time in writing. The only adequate response to this UCP chaos is a fully independent investigation, just as retired Justice Adele Kent conducted into the actions of former UCP Attorney General Casey Madhu. That investigation took 33 days and led to Casey Madhu being sacked as Attorney General for attempting to interfere in the administration of justice. Danielle Smith cannot hide from Albertans forever. She cannot hide from the truth forever. I'm calling once again on Attorney General Tyler Shandro to commission a fully independent investigation today. He does not need the Premier's permission to do this. Now, Shandro may be distracted by his ongoing disciplinary hearing before the Law Society, but that does not release him from his responsibility to uphold the rule of law in Alberta. For all of this UCP chaos to be happening at the same time is causing real and lasting damage to Alberta's reputation as a stable and mature democracy and a destination for investment and job creation. Alberta is better than this dangerous UCP incompetence. We must clear the air. We must have an independent investigation immediately. Thank you, and I'll take your questions.
Thank you, and we'll start with questions in the room.
Hi, Julia Wong, CBC News. The Premier's office, in a response to this story, said that all communications have been appropriate and done through proper channels. Just wondering what you make of this response.
Well, I think we've heard a lot of explanations from the Premier over the last week or so, but we've also heard her statements on the record saying that she has actually spoken to prosecutors and spoken to the Attorney General. And for her to say that those are appropriate communications, I think Albertans rightfully now have questions about how the Premier defines appropriate, because she has explained this conduct, which is clearly an interference in the administration of justice, as appropriate for some time. We know that it is not. We know that it is not appropriate for the Premier to be contacting prosecutors, to be pressuring the Attorney General about the ongoing charges related to either COVID-19 restrictions or the Coutts blockade. This is not appropriate in a healthy democracy. This is not upholding the separation between politics and politicians and the administration of law. Those two things should be absolutely separate, and if the Premier thinks that calling up the Attorney General and talking to him and perhaps pressuring him about these cases is appropriate, then Albertans should have very real questions about her competence and her judgment.
And you're calling for this independent investigation. Keeping in mind the review that was done from this weekend, specifically, how would you like to see this investigation unfold? I know that you've talked about the one that was underway with Minister Madhu at the time, but specifically, how would you like to see it conducted?
Well, we need to have an impartial person who is respected in understanding the administration of justice and the rule of law. Obviously, somebody like Adele Kent, who was a retired judge, who understands how the law works, should be appointed to do this. Somebody outside of government, outside of any partisan interests, and outside of politics. And we know that they should be able to do investigation by doing interviews and doing document reviews, all the things that are important as part of an investigation that did not take place under this government's so-called IT review that it conducted over the weekend, which is really just a search of email names, cross-reference, as far as we know. We know that it did not include deleted emails. We know that it may not have captured all personal emails that were exchanged. So certainly questions remain. An independent investigation would be just that, independent of the government, and have the ability to look at documents, interview people, and ask broader questions. Thank you.
Do one more quick check for questions in the room. Go to questions on the phone. Just a reminder to press *9 if you're joining us on the phone. Use the raise hand function if you're joining us via Zoom. If you can say your name and your outlet at the top. Go to our first caller.
Calling. So you've seen this letter then from the Premier now, this Twitter announcement, I assume, right?
I did see it briefly before I came to speak to you today, yes.
it's calling on the CBC to retract baseless allegations. Please retract it. It's saying that the official opposition is using it to smear the reputations of the Premier, her office staff, Crown prosecutors, and the public service. DTT cause it, yeah, and your damaging reputations. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the Premier herself and her statements are what has called into question her competence and her understanding of the administration of justice. It is the Premier herself who has stated multiple times on the record that she's contacted prosecutors and the Attorney General related to cases that are before the courts or that are currently being charged. So it is the Premier's statements herself that are calling into question her competence, and that is what we've been calling on from the beginning. Over a week ago now, my colleague Irfan Sabir came forward after the Premier's statements on the record and said we needed to have an independent investigation. What we've heard since then only confirms that there are Albertans who are concerned about how the Premier is conducting herself. We're now hearing reports from people within government who want to speak out, who clearly have concerns about how this matter has taken place. These are all coming from the Premier herself or people within government. Those are legitimate concerns, and an independent investigation is the only way to get to the heart of this.
Any follow-up, Dean?
Yeah, there's one line in there. It seems to me like we've got a new version of what she said to the officials. Now it's about options on amnesty. I thought it was about, reminding them of the, cases have to be in the public interest. Is this a new version now that we're seeing?
Dean, I think the story from the Premier has changed multiple times. She's either constantly trying to clarify her statements or claiming she was imprecise or whatever the case is. But we do know the statement seems to allege, and I think Albertans can confirm, that this Premier did publicly state multiple times when she was running to be the UCP leader that she wanted to look into these cases, that she was seeking amnesty. And now we're hearing that she herself said she did contact the prosecutors, she did contact the Attorney General, and now we're hearing that there are sources within the government who confirm that her interactions and her communications with the Attorney General's office were inappropriate. The story keeps changing. This is an unmitigated mess from the Premier. And what she's doing is continuing the chaos and undermining Albertans' trust and confidence in the administration of justice and in their understanding of whether or not the Premier knows her role. Does she know what her limits on her authority, or does she not? Because she keeps pushing the boundaries, and we're hearing that she's actually breached those boundaries. So I think Albertans are tired of this. The only way to get to the heart of what has happened here is to have an independent investigation, and the Premier can come before a podium any day and make the allegations that she's made in the letter today and answer questions from reporters and from Albertans for this conduct. Instead, she continues to hide.
We'll go to our next caller.
Hi there, it's Catherine Gurkowski with Alberta Today. Similar to Dean's question, so in this letter that the Premier has sent, she not only calls on CBC to retract and apologize, but calls on the official opposition to apologize to her, to her staff, to the Crown prosecutors, and those in the public service, and claims that what you've said here is damaging to all of their reputation, not just the Premier, but everyone involved, and that you've done reputational damage to the justice system. What would be a response to her calls for you to apologize?
Well, Catherine, I believe the Premier can stand at a podium, read that statement out loud, and can ask for that apology in person and take questions from the media, from reporters, from Albertans about her role, and we'd be happy to address that if she would actually come forward and speak to Albertans.
And I guess if these allegations are coming from somebody in the Justice Department, and they're saying they're being pressured, and it's the Justice Department that is able to call for this independent investigation, why do you not think that they would have? Why have they not called for that investigation if they're able to do that without asking the Premier's permission?
Well, it obviously requires political will in order to call an independent investigation. So that really requires action by Attorney General Tyler Shandro. He's the one who has to take the step and initiate the process to establish an independent investigation. And Tyler Shandro, in his role and capacity of Attorney General, is the top lawyer in the province. He has many obligations, but his fundamental obligation as Attorney General is to protect the administration of law in Alberta, and it has been called into question by the Premier herself, and now we're hearing from other sources and allegations. But there's absolutely a very real, live question created by the Premier about the fairness and the administration of justice. That is who created the problem, was the Premier. It is Tyler Shandro's obligation as Attorney General to protect the administration of justice. And the best way to do that, the best way to ensure that Albertans can have confidence in how the law is being applied, is for an independent investigation to be called immediately and to be dealt with in that way.
We'll do one more pass for questions. Star 9 if you're joining us on the phone. Raise hand function if you're joining us via Zoom. Seeing none, that's all for today. Thank you.